Samuel Davis.
Sean?
Yeah, John Lowe. Nice to meet you. Other than you were unknown, but see for that energy takes some of the COVID. Thanks a lot.
You need a little electricity.
Oh, I'm not speaking. I'm on what? A car? Oh, yeah, of course. There you go, sir. Yes, sir, thank you.
Here?
How many more weeks?
More alive.
Have you,
Oh, yeah. 27th of May. When it's gonna happen.
be my birthday?
Happy birthday to me.
It'll be your present, your present.
Isn't that supposed to work the other way around? Are you supposed to get
Well, that's not exactly a great birthday.
No, we're good, that's right, she's just taking 100 now. My wife's getting all this stuff. It'll be better when it's all with it,
Oh, yeah.
Guaranteed. Okay, one of your microphones.
Better.
That patience will be the greatest virtue. I'm still having to be patient. Patience is the greatest virtue. I'm push mode. Yes, I mean.
Young County Commissioners Court come to order, sitting in a regular session, Monday, April 26, 2021. It is 9:03 a.m. Make note that this meeting was posted in the manner and for the time required, and that all members of the court are present. If it's convenient, please stand and be led in invocation and our questions about the body.
That is correct. Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for another beautiful day in Young County, Texas. Father, we just want you to bless all those that are present this morning. Watch over them on their going and comings to Young County. Father, we just want you to guide and direct us. Give us wisdom on our meeting to better our county and better our communities on issues facing us today. Father, we just want you to lay your comfort hand over those that have lost loved ones this past week. And just put your healing hand on those that are suffering from ills and ailments. And Father, we just want you to appreciate you to putting us in this position to serve this county and to serve you. Father, we just want you to forgive us where we fail you and to work your will in our lives. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one and indivisible.
Make the pledge of allegiance. Ma'am, still hanging with that. Yeah, that's it. I'll make note that we are live on YouTube. Should be streaming live as we speak. We have a call-in number for anyone that might want to speak to anything that's on our agenda today. That number is 940-221-2107. With that said, we'll reach out on number 3, and that is a public hearing. Public hearing is regarding subdivision, manufactured housing communities, rules and regulations, in consideration of altering, modifying, changing, replacing, adopting, or readoption in accordance with Section 232 of the Texas Local Government Code. We have a sign-in sheet back here. If you wish to speak to this issue, we'd ask that you sign your name, signature, print name, and whether you're for or against the proposed rules and regulations. Young County last adopted the rules and regulations on January the 22nd, 2007. There's been some development activities and the prospect of others that have caused us to look once again at our adoption order. This is our current adoption order of 2007. And there is a proposed order. This one for adoption or readoption or reevaluation today. And if you'd like to speak on this matter, we'll entertain any of your comments at the present time. And that includes any member of the court if they wish to speak or say anything in regard to subdivision rules and regulations and development. That includes manufactured housing communities. No comments? There being no comments, and I'll close the hearing. And we'll move to either this discussion or motion, and then a discussion on the adoption of the proposed rules and regulations, including manufactured housing communities that have been posted available for the last 30 plus days as required by the notice provisions. So I don't believe that, to my knowledge, there's not been anyone that's asked about them or in regard to them. Do any of you know that?
I've been asking,
I don't think anybody,
I think I've
any of
seen-
the public has asked to review them. This was in, first published in the paper, I believe. March, March 15th, maybe it was. Early in mid-March. Upon my review, I believe that there is some things in there that needs to be addressed that has not been addressed, some language changes and things like that that I would like to see in there. But other than that, entertain anything the court wishes to proceed with.
I'd entertain a motion to go ahead and accept these rules, new rules and regulations that we've been working on as they are at this moment,
That would be all.
adopted.
Yeah, I second.
Do we have any discussion there?
There's just some stuff that they're going through legislature with right now that might affect these. I was reading on a bunch of that this weekend.
There was a substantial amount that went through last session in 2019. They changed a lot of provisions up and entered some deadlines and things like that the court would have to be responsive.
Yep.
The court is responsive, whether we adopt them or not, I guess.
The timeline of 9 to 10 days is going to be pretty rapid when they go to trying to get a hold of it. And that's the last one I read on.
The current one now is 30 days.
Right.
But there's other things that they're putting in there that we're hoping don't pass.
Right.
You know, the whole point of these rules and regulations to me is it's as much for us as it is for the people buying the properties, to protect them. Some of the other counties that surround us that's doing these subdivisions right now, there's one to the west, to the east of us right now, it's doing as many as 10 to 12 a month. And they, in the earlier years, received problems with people coming in and buying properties that they didn't have provisions for electricity or anything of that nature, water, which is two important things. And these rules and regulations here will help us to be able to monitor that and make sure people won't get stuck by a piece of land and not be able to have everything and develop it the way it needs to be developed. So it's just as much for the contractor as it is for the person buying the property.
Just gotta hope legislature don't cut our feet up from underneath us.
Well, and that's the other thing there is legislation. I don't think they really are in touch with the real world. You know what I mean? Evidently they haven't never done much of this stuff to see what it takes to get it done in the world today. There are people making rules and regulations down there that don't really understand. But anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, this document's a work in progress, but it does, we did address some issues that need to be caught back up since '07.
Yes.
I'll put the second out to approval, but it is.
And like Stacy said, this adopting this doesn't mean that we don't come back. And I feel like in what we need to do every 6 months, at least come back to the court and sit down and go over things and look back and see the problems we need to address or change or variances we need to do to keep it up to date every 6 months.
I believe that there's some things in the proposed order that may be a little overly restrictive and it causes conflict and consistency and continuity that I've addressed haven't made it completely through this order, and been making an effort for the last 30 days to get through it. It's a pretty good sized document. It's got lots of rules and regulations in it. I'm probably going to do whatever the court wishes. I'm going to know right along with the majority of the court what it wants to do, but it will be, like Mr. Wiley says over there, visited often, and I'm probably going to visit this more often, or visit it sooner than 6 months, because there's some wording and phrasing in there that I think needs to be modified to create some consistency and continuity in administration of it. So we've got a motion by Commissioner Wiley, second by Commissioner Rogers, to adopt the presented order regarding Young County rules and regulations and subdivisions and development, as has been on display for the last 32 or 3 or 4 days. Any further discussion?
I just didn't want to be surprised later when we have to change it because of the timelines they're trying to put in place.
I'll call the question, all in favor of adoption of such subdivision and development rules and regulations? All in favor? Any opposed? I declare that we have a new order regarding subdivision and development regulations in Young County, Texas. Be wise, and we will all try to make that effort to notify all of our realtors and the public also that our subdivision planning regulations have been upgraded. They are effective as of this date, and that those realtors that know that they're selling places to be subdivided needs to review this document. And even if it has exceptions, they need to be found to be accepted from the rules and regulations by some kind of determination of this court. Very good. And that's going to pass 5 votes. Okay, item number 4, public comments, announcements, presentations. These are no action items, but announcements and items that may be coming from the public, public interest, some other reason. I usually put a COVID update up. I don't have a complete update, but the last review that I saw was late last week. Maybe it was Friday. Don't remember all the numbers, but we've had quite a lot of tests, quite a lot of vaccinations. We've had 44 deaths, I believe, or 45 through this COVID pandemic. And I believe at last count there were 8. Mike, do you have any different numbers than that?
No, their last update was on April 21st, and there was 8 total, 5 in Young County. And
8 positives?
yeah, all 8 are at home. There's nobody in the hospital as of the 21st.
Nobody in the hospital. Okay, very good. Also, we have a document in our no action item that alerts us of the $5,306.68 that will be coming from the tobacco settlement proceeds. It'll be part of 2021 tobacco settlement. I don't remember this exactly when it happened, but a number of years ago. And it depleted itself in some form or fashion. So this is about what we get each year on that settlement. Does anybody else have any? We've got an update on the Run for the Children event that took place. Suppose very successful. Looked like the weather was pretty good. Mike, do you know how many participants there were?
Thomas got that, I was out on the track, so.
Any further comments? No other comments that they have? Item number 5 is consider county clerk minutes of the previous meeting, that the April 12th, 2021. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections that need to be made to those?
So moved.
Motion. Mr. Wiley. A second from Mr. Rogers. To approve those minutes as presented. All in favor? All in favor? Aye. That's 5-0. No opposition. Item number 6, consider auditor's budget amendments and vouchers payable.
Okay, I don't have any budget amendments, but I have vouchers as always. And there is non-butane unit. Total of the vouchers, $82,574.89.
Pick it up.
$82,574.89.
574.89.
Yes. And out of the general, it's $68,783.23.
So moved.
Mr. Pruitt,
Sir?
on the motion. Mr. Cresswell, on the second. All in favor of approval of the minutes as presented, not the minutes, the payment of vouchers as presented, that being $82,574.89 total, and $68,753.23 that is from the general account. Is that correct?
Yes.
All in favor? 401. We have, make note that Commissioner Wiley abstained from any deliberation or any vote on that issue pursuant to his conflict of interest statement. Okay, I don't see our treasurer here. We don't have treasurer's report. No action. Item number 8, these are discuss and consider employee bonds. That being Melissa K. Martin, adult probation officer, $5,000. Tommy Ditmar, Young County Community Supervision Corrections Department, also $5,000.
So moved.
Second. Wiley on the motion to approve. Cresswell, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 9 is discuss, consider donation of property from Fort Bell out to Young County Museum of History and Culture. Is Shannon here?
I haven't heard nothing from Shannon or them either yet.
I think we were gonna discuss if it was,
She's still in the hospital with her husband.
So I think we should just table it. Let's just table it. And
Okay, we'll take no action on it, including on our future agenda. On that, donation of property that we have, I think Shannon is the CEO of a new 501c3 organization that's in Young County, regarding Young County history. And
I might get with Tony White, I think he's assistant or something with it. Maybe I get him to come up here.
but they do have their 501c3 record
I'm pretty sure that
designation.
yeah.
Because we'll, either way, we'll need some kind of instrument, would be an interlocal, would be a contract, I guess, exchanging property of some sort for some value that's equitable, I guess, to both parties in that instance. So if I can get with Shannon in contact, we'll discuss whatever that is, and get the appropriate documents. I think it's display cases, basically, isn't it? Does this new group do they have a location?
I've heard something. I haven't heard nothing yet.
I'm sure we'll.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll back to that. And our treasurer, do you want us to back up the in-kind treasurer's report?
I don't have anything except for that money.
Okay. We have reached about 30 minutes. Let's move to number 11. We've got number 10, but we can't introduce that until 10 a.m. We've got a few minutes left. We've got discussion, consideration of burn restrictions. We can talk about rain here, or
Sit in for 3 days.
I hate to say how much I got on the last one, so let somebody else can say they got more.
I will not.
I was in Throckmorton County last weekend, and I don't believe Throckmorton got blessed like Young County did with rain. I don't think they got dropped in Throckmorton County. Did pretty good here, but I'm not gonna say how good. No action on burn restrictions?
no action.
We do not have a burn restriction in place at the current time. Okay, we're gonna take a little, take a break till 10 a.m. That's the last item on our, only other item on our agenda. We've got a host of people, say some please on the, y'all wish to speak on this, if you please sign our login sheet on the change of that.
No, I never cease to give you more paper and stack on a pile somewhere, but I've got copies of the applications that are interested. Map of the investments on for each commissioner, county judge. There's a map of the investments over there.
I read all this weekend.
Cleaned out.
Stacy
Y'all
Crusher.
can sign
But it's
it.
really not back in every 16.
Actually, I did
All that landed.
It's not exactly in order, so what's on the right side, you can still see that these are not part of the application. These are up until the end of the stage, that's Manufacturing. Why don't we swap? I'll just. So what's on the left side is the applications. I'm not, what's on the right side?
Yes, sir.
It's all good.
Good, good.
Sir.
Get around the state. It makes it a lot easier. Basically, we get more well, there is that too. That's my fun.
Making comment?
I can figure out a way to write off fishing, I guess.
So I'm not gonna ask you how much rain you got.
That would be nice, too.
I got 7 minutes.
It looks pretty good. This looks kind of green on the drive up. Yeah.
The week before, I had that, I wonder if that's about 8 more.
I was here.
Together.
I drove through that.
Like 4 or 5 Now, Throckmorton County, we guess about what I got over in the border, 9/10. They were a little more blessed than we were.
We're working on.
Signature page.
A couple people that were talking for the. I had mailed a copy with electronic signature on it. I can go run and print a copy of that. Or I emailed it to you and to you. We can print that off there now. Let me know, resend it, float it to the top of the inbox, then we can print that off. Thank you.
Wanda, how are you?
I'm here.
Well, come on in. You see it anywhere? Close as you can? Okay. Well, then, you got open.
I'm right here.
Okay.
I just got Oh, yeah, okay, now it's gonna be a lot easier on you. I just can't ever remember what you're good name.
How are you this morning?
Tired, bro, that.
Tired.
I just rest.
Get dressed up here.
It's not my nail.
Well, it's difficult, isn't it, these days?
I didn't know whether to do this or not.
Well, they say it's up to your decision if you want to wear a mask. There's quite a few that aren't on.
It was about 2 years ago.
If you like to wear it, then it's probably a good thing to do, get everybody standing around.
If everybody that comes in doesn't have it, I guess maybe it'll be clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Can would you like to talk to the Apex guy?
Yeah.
Any questions that you might have?
Well,
that percent of the
mainly it's wherever they were going, which wherever, I need to see a map. Better than mine and yours.
It's 53,
Okay.
53.
Hey, Ben, give them
Yes, may I come over and just,
Okay.
I'm just
Yeah.
sending one more thing to
Yeah,
the judge.
absolutely.
But Drew,
This is Drew. He's with Apex.
Nice to meet you.
He's the director of the project, and he is the manager of the project. So
That we try to get rid of also.
I want to know for sure wherever y'all go away, I mean, where the line.
The project boundary, or where the turbines themselves?
let me just kind of update you on that. She's on the southwest corner. And there has not been anything signed with her yet. It's just she's looking to see like potential of what could be. And, it's always been holding with your sister's place.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the map didn't include you at the time because you have not signed yet. So really, they were waiting on Bob Green with your sister's place. So
Get rid of it.
This is Ben.
Right.
Ben.
Yes.
So Ben can probably help us with some maps. Will show us where potentially the terminality located.
Everyone's great, got my two college kids, one's graduating. And then my other one's got 2 weeks left.
So we can definitely put a map together to show you.
No,
And then the
anyway,
lines
he
that
went the full 4 years.
would all be buried.
Yeah, he was gonna stay a fifth
Not all of them, there might be
year,
an
because he
overhead
was
potential,
rowing
but
and he
you guys
has a
see
red shirt here, and they
Lakeside,
rowing or actually dropped out. Now he doesn't have a reason to stay.
It's gonna be away from the substation.
I just emailed him again. Well, he's got a job and he's signature on it for Goldman Sachs.
They would not. They're not looking at doing any transmission from your side. I don't
He entered there last
believe
summer.
you could all be buried underground.
Got a
Big cross.
full job, started into the summer.
Wait and see where they could be located.
How are your kids? I know they're old.
Once
What's your
we have,
youngest?
at least design, we'll show you the design, and he can give you the specs for housing and bars, like you
Oh, nice.
suggested. But then we would also give you a generic road, where they would be located, make sure that you're okay with them. We make sure you're okay with the area in general.
I'm well, it's very much, that's what I'm saying.
Sports management.
So,
Oh, very cool.
And join that.
home place will be 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
My mother said it was.
Wow. Most important, you got 2 grand. Wow.
Before I. You got lost somebody, yeah.
That's amazing.
They split up the property out there. The property is the bigger of her sister's place.
I know.
And so it was originally.
That's just not
it was
supposed
all
to
her
happen.
family. And then they broke up the pieces. One got
It's hard
one
to
side.
believe we're getting to the toddler family.
So that's.
I've got a
Well,
yeah, no, I've got,
holding out
I
as
was
much
up
as
to
just he
20,
hasn't signed
25,
because
sold
he's
about,
saying it might be too much
I'm
paperwork.
down to 12.
And it's really not. Well, there's, I mean, you
Luckily,
guys
I've
can probably
I've
get into
been,
that a little better, but
I've been
the
lucky
paperwork
that
is minimal.
when
Once
my
you get
first starts to
signed, I
get
mean,
paid,
there's
someone out of the
not much
blue
paperwork
called me, and I
involved.
just, it's just pure luck. It's not, I haven't put any effort into it, and that's something I've heard now.
That is the initial side of it. And as we discussed earlier, that
Yeah, they,
lease
they'll
that you
take
see in your
it.
hand is actually,
So
we
we'll stretch them all.
negotiated, our family negotiated for about 8 months. on
Just
that
ask them to leave one,
And so it's.
leave one mature pool, and then they turn anything else there. You see the shows,
Well, that is
so I've been pretty honest, it's not pretty good. At first, I had a lot of nothing. I said, there are a number of attorneys in the state of Texas that are really good representing. This one, it would be nice to build that, because they take a long time. My Buffalo board has seen every lease things ever in Hawkins, and they know what needs to be. I said, you can well represented, but then they chose after. So they got really tough.
Unless you're lady stuff for the.
That's how they.
The rent.
We are always saying,
They kind of try to get us to see what's going on.
If there's anywhere on the property that you really want to make sure we can sit down with you and have a red pen.
Somebody posted about
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Yeah. Could you not get close to yours? Mine come right there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I've been so bad for me, I took a certain tax.
short hair.
Really?
And that way you don't have to share on.
Appreciate that.
I somehow not get
Kind of got up.
These are short here.
And then it got.
Did you see it? Did you see it?
I don't think there's anything of it.
Well,
Well, that's what's kind of important is that.
no, they've been very deceitful.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It'll be like a flock here. Another one will be like certain.
Oh, really?
My theory is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's gonna happen.
That's kind of my theory.
So what did you do? What's your outlook?
I've just been real fortunate on the others. Don't make a lot of noise over there, man.
Yeah.
We're at 4.
But you say bed, we didn't change his name.
Oh, you got it.
I didn't have the problem. I'm the main take care.
I know pretty much every time I go down there.
We have an old. Oh, yeah. Found out.
Yeah, they are fast.
So I hurry down, they just sit there. Oh, I had to get that started.
What's up, Wynn? How are you? I wanted to see how a true court run.
That's why you're watching me.
Your command is impressive.
Yeah, those fake laptops, whether they really work.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm watching cartoons. Oh, you didn't know that? Little Bugs Bunny? Kind of looked at it like that. That's what I had to my wife.
That's yours. And that's my business.
But,
How much for that cost?
There's supposed to be a sign somewhere.
Facebook Live.
So your dad told us we had
Sharing all facts.
check on
Is there a sign? I'm Drew's.
Sure. Passes.
A little bit of this in the Newcastle, it looks like the majority of it to damage. Is it? Okay. So it's good. Pretty big joint. What's total capital? What's the total capital on the No, I don't. You'll call it. Yeah, so most of it's gonna be that could be a big deal. Well, if you need me to say anything.
Well, I've been here from January. Yeah, I'm kind of
That's what
I'm in. Really not this.
I'm here for support. That's what it's gonna take.
How are you?
I love you.
Good. You know, we do that football meeting every year. It's pretty quiet. Get a push in first, you know, and got everybody kind of get her done.
Even with the reinvestment, you could do it, like help cash roll.
Community voters. That's what everybody already does. That's what everybody decides.
There you go. So they give it to them, they want it. You know, they control it.
Yeah, it's tough. I've been coaching every year. It is. It's tough. We start to dumb down over the years. The first, I was
600 million.
we dumbed it down a little bit. Everybody's on it. Everybody's taking more. They don't really. Oh, yeah.
We're already here.
A lot of that. They don't know crazy other people are still, and so that, you know, here's the one guy that knows everybody else is good. Never miss your time.
But you know, yes, you can still use these layouts, but kind of,
Bending forward, it's not walking.
it's not, right, I'm talking about the event, and, you know, if you're you don't want
Those are sheriff here. This is good. They start,
up with this and keep my guys going. And then do my part. I think I got a few guys.
Were you able to do that remotely or? That's gotta be hard.
New Year's meeting.
Well, we definitely are.
There you go, Steel.
We do. It's gonna be back down for late night. Pull that out.
I don't think, reason to heal it. Said that you can't get a fair shake, but whether that's true. It's an easy excuse.
I know it's all for him.
Give me a day before one. Somebody else calls the schedule, is that right? First come, first served.
Let me make
Just let me know the day.
And I went around to find it also.
I'm used to 10 o'clock and
I've been in that office.
you said
When I go down, I wind up straight and make it, and somebody else.
Is it just?
I'm not gonna say that girl called me. It's like, what you wanted. You know what's changing and what's not.
No, it's, I've learned a lot. Well, I've been here since I was four.
testimony only, no question. Bob Bass.
Nice to meet you.
Being our county representative. Zach Burkett. How are you? Good.
Daisy.
Never had presented it, well, I didn't know what the format was. Well, we've got a list here. Yeah, what's it? When we get through that, we'll go down the list. Thanks. If anybody wants to make any comments. And then there'll be a question and answer on this. Yes. Is there time limit on this? That's 3 minutes. Well, I can't get credit. The pressing questions I highlighted and others, put those at the back, it's a short view. Okay. I'll go down the list. We'll have a question.
And the red wires and everything.
I got the answer. Oh, well, I do have one. Has this issue, this particular invoice that we're talking about? Yes. Or is this the first time?
This is the first public hearing. I know that, no, it's been.
No, I meant the hearing, public hearing.
Yeah, this is the first public. Okay. It's been in the court one time. This is their own project.
But not a public hearing. Okay.
Big cities.
Just kind of getting caught up.
You doing okay?
Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate that.
Hey, Zach.
A little like that. Nice to meet you, Mike.
Yeah, so when I, he doesn't.
We're playing a lot of baseball right now. soccer. We'll go this weekend. To Oklahoma City. You gonna travel?
No, actually. No, sir. Just listen to these.
So you'll take care of that? Yeah. So we take $100. Courtney and I'll split. She'll go to soccer, and I'll go to Fort Worth, racing.
I know.
Yeah.
But one class crazy. I think he's on an interview. Soccer was not part of it. We didn't travel all over the world.
Travels. Chase.
That's what it was, but it's just. It'll take a second.
It doesn't show rivers and county roads, so you can place it a little closer to where the.
Can we try the river?
Can you draw the whole river? Oh, good. I just.
I hear you.
I can run those.
I know where that is. Not good.
You familiar with this country?
A little bit. It makes a big loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be best to get rid of that
So we have
It doesn't always work. Like I said, the worst case scenario, just restore it.
I know we don't really there's something we want to use. That's what I was trying to say. How far you can take, you can't really tell without
Young County Commissioners Court come back into session. It is 10:01 a.m. Monday, April 26, 2021. We've reached item number 10, which is a public hearing. This public hearing was published in the Ground Leader, and we gave notice on March the 24th, 2021. The public hearing is to consider and act upon a resolution, number 1, to consider the application of Apex Clean Energy Incorporated for the designation of a certain area of Young County, Texas as a reinvestment zone known as Young Wind, establishing the boundaries thereof and providing an effective date, and considering acceptance of an application for a tax abatement for Young County to enter into a tax abatement agreement with Apex Clean Energy Incorporated pursuant to the provisions of the Property Redevelopment and Tax Abatement Act, Chapter 312 of the Texas Tax Code. We have an announcement sheet, or we have a sign-in sheet in a moment for those who are wishing to speak or make some kind of comment with regard to this proposed project. Is there anyone that wishes to say something that has not signed on this sign-in form? Okay. I'm going to introduce Bob Bass. He's with Allison Bass McGee and Associates, and we use their expertise on a few occasions. I believe this is the first time that we've used Bob on a project like this for reinvestment zone. He's out of Austin. He's a member of Allison Bass Associates, and they are general counsels for Jim Allison is the general counsel for County Judge and Commissioner Association of Texas. I've known Bob for a long time, and he's an expert in his field, so I'll give you Bob Bass.
Thank you, Judge. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the process first, and then go into some of the details Texas counties are governmental entities, subdivisions of the state of Texas, and only have the powers and authority that are granted to them by the Constitution of the state of Texas or by the Texas legislature through express statute. Counties have limited authority in terms of regulatory authority unless they're given that authority, but one of the areas in which they have been given regulatory authority is over subdivisions, for example. In other areas, they have very little authority. One of the tools that they've been given is to encourage economic development, and they can generally do that through two sections of the Texas statutes. One, Chapter 381, has to do more with tax rebates, loans, grants, but they can do tax abatements under that chapter. The more common chapter for economic development is under Chapter 312 of the Texas Property Tax Code. That requires first a governmental entity to hold a public hearing, such as we're having now, to consider whether or not to create what is known as a reinvestment zone. The purpose of the reinvestment zone is to encourage development within that zone that would have the benefit of additional jobs, economic development, recruiting new industry to the county, whatever. We have an application originally by Apex, formed a separate corporation, Young Wind Inc., that is the true applicant for and they have submitted an application. Back earlier in the year, the county adopted what are known as criteria and guidelines for economic development and consideration of tax abatement. That is a prerequisite that has to be done before a county can receive an application for abatement. And so that sets out what an abatement application should contain within it. And we have received an application from Young Wind Inc. that does in fact conform to those criteria and guidelines. So the court now has before it the necessary preconditions, you might say, for the court to consider the first step, which is to consider the creation of a reinvestment zone. We will hear in a moment from Ben Sims, who is here on behalf of Young Wind. I'm not going to say too much about the project other than it's an area of land within Young County that's located out near the Newcastle School District. It will be the site of a fairly significantly sized potential wind project. It is a significant financial investment in that zone. There will be a considerable number of jobs, temporary jobs, that will build the project over roughly an 18-month time span, possibly longer, depending on various circumstances. And then it will have rather small, as these projects, wind and solar projects, don't require that much in the form of permanent jobs. But all of those factors would be considered by the court in deciding whether or not to go ahead and create the zone. So, that being said, Judge, we have submitted to you a draft resolution for the creation of a reinvestment zone that is described in the application and is attached to the resolution. The resolution would declare the county's eligibility to participate in tax abatement and order the creation of a reinvestment zone to be known as Young Wind. As I have said, a qualifying application has been received. We've reviewed that application and have determined that it is in compliance with the established guidelines. This public hearing was duly noticed as required by law, and therefore the court is in a position, after it hears from the public, to take up for consideration. The zone is composed of roughly 20,000 acres of land, as I say, in the area around just to the south and to the west of Newcastle. So I'd like to introduce Ben Sims for his comments.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. I had a chance to meet before January, but I'll just reintroduce myself for the room. My name is Ben Sims. I'm the development manager of the Young Wind Project, representing Apex Clean Energy. We're an American-owned, that is no foreign investment, privately owned renewable energy development company based in Virginia. The team here today representing Apex is all Texas-based. We have 8 built and operating wind projects in the state of Texas collectively. These have brought over $5 billion of investment into the state of Texas, and through their project lives will see taxes and landowner payments to counties and school districts in the amount of $1.3 billion. Our most recent successes are the Aviator wind project in Coke County, which is a 525 megawatt project, a large project, and the White Mesa project in Crockett County, which is a 500 megawatt project, also a large project to be completed this spring. When we first approached Judge Bullock and Commissioner Pruitt to formally introduce the project to you in late 2019, early 2020, we were looking at a 300 megawatt size project. We are applying today with the full intention of this being a 500 megawatt wind project. Utilized by nearly all wind projects built in the state of Texas, county reinvestment zones and 10-year abatements are crucial for attracting this size of private investment in our state, which has the 7th highest property taxes in the nation. Since we first informally introduced the project, I mentioned we've gone up from 300 to 500 megawatts. We've also gone from 4 associated families to a dozen families and landowners, with continued interest growing, and we will continue to sign interested landowners to make sure that folks on these and this project that are near the zone or in the zone can be entered into the project. We have also employed a number of construction companies locally to help us improve our wind resource by clearing sites for us to erect net towers to study the resource. So that's just a very small preview of the local spending that can be expected to come. On January 11th, when we told the commissioners we'd be back in the spring with an agreement, well, we are back. We have fully negotiated this agreement with Bob Bass, and there are a number of items in it that we will not have a chance to discuss all of them today, but I'd like to mention that there will be a local job fair conducted prior to construction with date, time, and location announced in the newspaper. As feasible, the wind project company and general contractor will work from a list throughout the construction process of local prospective employees, vendors, contractors, and service providers. To speak to the part on jobs, permanent jobs are lower on wind projects than they are with other forms of investment. A benefit may be that while the long-term jobs for this project may be 2 by Young Wind LLC and another additional 8 to 10 with the purveyor of the equipment. So we're looking at a total of 12 permanent jobs likely. That's 12 families coming into your school district. So for the amount of investment coming in, we're not using up a lot of the county and school district's resources. Lastly, I can proudly share that this agreement before you today, as negotiated by Mr. Bass, has the largest per megawatt payment in lieu of taxes pilot payments that our company has ever agreed to with the county. The last county I mentioned that we had in Coke County, the Aviator Wood Project, the entire payment, including taxes and pilot, to that county or less than what this county stands to loan from the pilot. So, that's really on behalf of Mr. Bass, who represented you fairly well in this process. I'm going to rest for my comments now, and we'll have another portion of the public hearing when we move on to the abatement agreement itself, in which Will Preston, who is our tax advisor, will speak about the financials before you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
Normally in this stage, I don't go into the terms of the abatement agreement per se, since they're really a separate item. I would be glad to answer any questions the court might have, but just as a matter of procedure, creation of the zone is the first order of business. Are there any questions from the members of the public that you would like to ask on the zone creation?
Bob, do we need to do that before we get comments from?
It's a public hearing, so public comments are fine. If there are none, we can close that portion of the public hearing.
We have some public, we have some signed people that want to
All right,
speak.
let's go ahead and hear those.
Okay. Well, first one, Ben, is this your
That
first
was,
comment?
well,
wanna
you
come
can
back?
straight me from the public comment list, because that was
Alright,
my piece, yes.
Next, we have John Davis. And like Mr. Davis, those that speak, if you'll please come up here to the bench. This is for the, not only the benefit of the public, but most of the benefit of the board, and to, get him on our,
Would you like to speak to you, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate, thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm John Davis, and I'm proud to say that I'm an energy rancher from Menard, Texas. And I'm also on the advisory board of the Conservative Texans for Energy Innovation. It's a statewide organization. We advocate for all of the above energy with a focus on competition and free markets. I'm also a member of the Texas Sheep and Goat Raisers Association and Texas Southwest Cattle and Raisers Association. I'm here as an individual who knows what you're about to go through, and I want to share my story with you, a story that's been identical to many folks around Texas.
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
They're having a hard time hearing you. Could you kind of?
Like that?
Yeah,
Okay. In addition to being a rancher, I'm also a former Republican member of the Texas legislature. And the good news is there are only 34 days left before they're out of office.
Yeah.
I had, not that I'm counting. I had,
About that.
yes, sir. Anyway, I had the privilege and honor of serving in the Texas House for 16 years. And my last 4 years, I was chairman of the Economic and Small Business Development Committee. And during my time there, I served under Speaker Laney and Speaker Craddock and Speaker Strauss. Also, I'm proud to say I was a co-author of the original legislation in 2001 that created what you're about to hear today on the chapters 312 and 313 tax abatement program. The financial benefits to the Young Wind project have been laid out before you. I'm not here to convince you which way to vote, but I'm just here to tell you that a similar project in another part of Texas and how it helped to save our family's ranch. In 2017, my family partnered with an energy company to provide ranch for part of our acreage of the Cactus Flats Wind Farm. Our ranch in Concho County is home to 7 of 53 wind turbines made up of the Cactus Flats. That generates 148 megawatts of wind power that provides power to the GM facility in Arlington, Texas. And this project is an economic engine for our part of rural Texas and has become part of the single largest taxpayer in Concho County. As a part of our partnership, financial resources for that project are providing working capital for the operations and maintenance of my family ranch. Additionally, thanks to the revenue from the wind project, my wife and I have begun the restoration of many of our historical structures at the ranch. I'm thrilled that my kids and hope that my grandkids will want to keep the ranch of the family. And that's what this wind revenue does. It gives us a stability of income that helps make it more predictable. In addition to raising sheep and goats and hunting leases for hunters, it gives me some income to diversify, to gives me to keep it in the ranch. Anyway, but sadly, there are many rural Texans who are not as fortunate as we are. They have been forced to sell part of their land just to get by. Not every Texas county is blessed with the personal family wealth of oil and gas royalties. These projects help average Texans stay afloat and earn a steady source of reliable income. I didn't strike oil, but I did strike some wind. Many here today may be suspicious of tax abatements for renewable wind energy projects, saying that taxpayers for these tax abatements, it's false. The tax abatement program is a very successful tool that has been used all across Texas for many, many years. In fact, there's not been a renewable energy project in Texas that has moved forward without the benefit of a tax abatement. For comparison's sakes, there are probably many of you, possibly in this room, and myself included, that are enjoying the tax benefits of an agricultural tax exemption on their land. There will also be talk of the winter freeze, that renewable power sources don't work when it's cold. It's true that some turbines did freeze temporarily and some solar farms got snowed on. But guess what? They're all back up and working now. In contrast, our thermal generation assets, nuclear, coal, natural gas suffered losses, severe outages as well. The freeze has hit us all hard. I lost quite a few sheep and goats, as I know many of you have, but no source of energy production was unscathed. That is why we need all types of energy production. A diversified energy mix is a strength, and we should do all we can to preserve our all of the above approach. In Texas, private property rights are important to landowners. I feel comfortable telling you that I am the best steward of my family's ranching legacy. There's no one better positioned than me to decide what's best for my family and our ability to continue our ranching tradition. From my personal experience, I can confirm that our partnership with renewable energy was a win-win, and it is the future. I hope it will be with your community as well. And I thank you guys for serving as county commissioners and county judge. I know it's a tough gig, and you're closest to the people doing that. But from my personal experience, I think it's a good thing. So,
How long have you been in Menard?
Our family since 1880. Johanna and Johanna Wilhelm. If you Google sheep queen of Texas, you'll see Johanna Wilhelm. So I come from royalty, sir.
Did you know Max Stobble?
What's that?
Did you know Max Stobble?
Yes, oh yeah, Max and Marcia. They're great friends of mom and dad. And they had the ranch house meet, and Max has been out to the ranch many times. He's he worked. I was going to sheep the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. You'll go there and you'll see Max in a big lemon, which does his stuff and also lemonade. And so I tease Max about that, a big old lemon.
I had some college experience with him.
Okay, I'll visit with him next week, sir.
He was an instructor.
Yeah, okay, that's right, that's right. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How long has the wind farm been on your
3 years. And I told them, I'll be honest with you, I told them no. They approached us 4 times. We told them no the first 3 times. And but the more we looked at it, the more we thought about it, I finally said yes, because I'm fighting coyotes, I'm fighting the drought, I'm fighting water, I'm fighting the prices of the market at the feed, and it just gives us some stability. And it gets us, so we finally said yes. So we agreed. And it wasn't my first, I won't want that. But again, they're there, and I have my ranch is called Stony Lonesome Ranch, and it's for reasons. Up way up on the hill, and it's rocky, and I got windmills for water, if that's what we used for years. And then I have the 7 turbines there. So like just this Sunday, I was working sheep and goats, and I took some to market in San Angelo, but I round them up, and there's the wind turbines in the ground. But it gives me diversity, and that way my kids have an interest. And that way I can keep it in my family, because once they see, oh, this is a piece of land, they're going to sell it to somebody. But now they have an interest. It gets, and both my grandkids, I have a little 2.5-year-old, and it just, if they have an interest, and they won't sell it. And they would say, oh, we can make some money from the deer hunters. I get some from the sheep and goats, but I'm fighting coyotes. I got 10 guardian dogs that out there keeping the bobcats and coyotes away from them, so I can get a decent kid crop. So anyway, but it's just a diversity, and it keeps an interest, and my kids have an interest now. So hopefully my grandkids and anyway, the rest have been family since 1880. So that's what I have now.
So you didn't lose full control when they built this house?
No, absolutely not. They've been good neighbors. They've been right up, and we got you have to have a good contract. And you need to have a good contract, because if they ever go down, they're bonded, because they will disassemble them, take them down, and get out of there. But you have to have a good written, the landowner needs a good contract. And they even help pay for our attorney fees to get the contract, to make darn sure you have a good written contract to protect you. And so they did that. They were good neighbors. They were upright. We were comfortable with it. But you're right. And the roads are good going through. They say they're real loud. They're not loud. I mean, I go. But I think yes, sir, it was for 3 years, and I don't even know they're there, they're just part of the landscape.
You see any tax relief in the county? Other entities?
No, sir, I mean, it's the tax that you pay on the land, I get ag exempt, so I don't pay that much anyway, on for the tax exempt. But I've been pleased with it, and it gives us income, and then I'm using that to restore, the original ranch was 1880. The houses and the old barn, it's a huge barn, and Max knows about it, and I can restore it, and I can fix it up, and I have people coming out saying it's history. And it's history, and because they used to have like 40,000 acres, but over time, as you know, it dwindled down. So I went out, and my godmother died in the fire. I bought the original headquarters from my cousin. And so that's where I used to go as a kid, but now it's stayed in the family, and now I'm restoring it. I bought the headquarters in 2014, she died in 2012. The last 7 years, I've just been fixing up. By trade, I'm a roofing contractor. That's where I make money, so I recoated the roofs, restore the walls, but then I can gradually build back up. And I've got my Angora, brought back some Angora goats. I got my Oshkosh dogs, they walk. And then I have my Spanish goats, and I have the Great Pyrenees and Anatolian cross that live with them. And so that we can do that. And it's a journey, but I'm fortunate that I can do that. And but when it helps to diversify you, and that's important if you want to keep sustainability.
You think that the wind farm has preserved your ranch?
Absolutely, no question about it. Absolutely, and the kids see the money, and the stability. But the only problem I've had is that my wife, she gets half of it, and she didn't sign it over to me. She wouldn't sign it over to me. I gave her the check, and had her name on it. I said, "What are you going to do with it?" Well, she said, "Honey, do you want it?" I said, "Honey, whose name's on it?" She said, "It's mine." I said, "Well, give it to James. What is James?" And so she hadn't offered to give it back to me. So
Thanks, Mr. Davis.
appreciate it.
Okay, Cam Biddy.
My name is Cam Bennett. I'm here locally in Graham, just down the street. Our family's been here a long time. I think most of you probably know that. Remodeled my grandmother's house down the road. It's over 100 years old, so we have some deep roots. But I'm here today to speak for the Bennett family and those of the M.K. Graham estate that couldn't be present today in favor of the tax abatement as requested by APEC Clean Energy. This is all for the benefit of Young Wind Project. We see that it is, and we're fortunate to have been given this opportunity. But I do want to thank you, Judge, for allowing us to speak, and the commissioners as well. I know it's time of you guys to sit here and listen to us, but we do appreciate that. It's a privilege today to be standing here as a fifth-generation landowner in Young County, starting back to the first settlers. Our family has been here for a long time. We've made it for many years working on the lands, ranching, farming. We're fortunate to have had some oil and gas interest as well, and I know a lot of you in here are in the same position. So those have been well for us, and it's continued to be so. And it's been our livelihood for many generations. So, Judge and Commissioners know, but you know that with prices and with our ranching outfits and cattle and everything and our weather, it's hard to make a living off of all of it today off your land. So we've decided to go out and look for other ways. Let's diversify as we just heard as well. So we see wind and solar as an opportunity that's key for our family to provide the financial support going forward. Because we feel like that the money that'll be made for the taxing on the improvements go to the county roads to the employees. As well as much needed maintenance equipment. I know you guys always need some new blades or dozers, whatever it might be. And then, we just had one of the best events this year at the fort. Belknap Buchanan's. And so, you know, we need money to help support these local activities and local requirements. So I ask that with your vote for the tax abatement, you are helping families such as ours that live in this county. I do want to say that it's important that we continue to live in this county. That we don't, you know, we sit here and I see some in the audience as well that are part of our volunteer fire department. We also donate to the volunteer fire departments. We also see that you know, we're here to lead the service clubs, to support the service clubs and those that they do in town. We also help our churches. We feed and clothe from our church, from our local, just being us in town and helping our community. And we do so by revenues that we do make off our lands and by potentially land. But Judge and Commissioners, I want you to know that if you vote in favor of Apex's request, I'm able to raise a sixth generation. I have 3 boys in this county, in Young County, and they'll love the land just as much as the first generation. So, thank you for your time.
I don't know if any questions of me. Not much.
Judge, I'm sorry. I walked in late and I didn't get on the sheet to speak. Can I still?
I'll give you the opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Your name is?
Kerry Sanders. Gary.
Gary.
Yes.
Okay. Our next one would be Will.
Judge, I'm going to wait and speak to the specifics on the abatement as far as the thing on benefit.
We'll move to Zach Burke.
Thank you, Judge, and for those of you that are hard of hearing, I'll try to help you because I'm hard of hearing, so I didn't hear a lot of what's already been said.
That's why someone turned around to you.
I appreciate it. I make no bones about being here to speak against the project. About a year and a half ago, I got wind that it was developing and that it was out near our place out west. And so I started trying to learn more about it, about where it was primarily, and how many turbines would be involved. I got some details, but again, it was a year and a half ago, and it's been evolving, as most of you probably know. The only concern I had was my opinion that the windmills, the turbines are a blight on the landscape, and seeing the red lights flashing in sync every night is a little bit of a headache. And if that was my only concern, you could very appropriately ask me to depart, because that's not a very good basis for an opinion against. The bigger opinion I have against it is the fact that I am in an industry that provides a service. We build roads, and I will admit that electricity is a very essential service that these turbines provide. We all got to have it. We all got to have electricity. By the same token, we all got to have groceries, and we all got to have oil and gas to get our cars to go around, so we go to church and go to the grocery store and whatever. So there are a lot of essential services that are being provided out there by different industries. Mine happens to be the highway construction industry, and we also make road building materials. Well, without the materials to build the road, you wouldn't have a road to get to your grocery store to buy your groceries. So you could make the argument that mine is an essential industry as well as the wind industry. But I don't enjoy tax abatements. I've been paying taxes in this county since 1958 on all the equipment we own. We don't get abatements for that, although we provide a service just like the wind industry does. The best I can tell, and I did a little bit of research, not nearly enough. When I stepped up here, I felt like the uninvited cousin that came to a reunion. Maybe I wasn't really supposed to be here, but the research I did, the first thing I did was, recently, was when I got the little footprint map in the paper. I thought, well, where exactly is it? So I went through the 75 tracts that are listed on the county YCAD, Young County Appraisal District's system, GIS mapping system, and out of those 75, 43 of them came back no result. I couldn't pin down where they were. So I've got a checkerboard of the tracts that are involved in this wind farm. I never did figure that out. I got some help down there at the county tax office, but I'm not a whiz on the computer. I'm not a knuckle-dragging Neanderthal either, but I couldn't figure out the map. But I was concerned that it was going to be my next door neighbor. But the bigger concern is, and remains, that an industry like mine is kind of like that unwanted cousin case. We don't enjoy the breaks. We don't enjoy any tax abatements, although we provide 200 jobs, not 10 or 12 perhaps permanent jobs, 200 full-time jobs in this area, but we don't enjoy any kind of tax breaks like this group is getting. So my opinion is I know we need to embrace new technologies, but I also know my industry and most other industries are, if we don't stand on our own economically, we don't survive. I feel like an industry that has to have tax abatements in order to survive is probably not right. And in my opinion, I think it's a travesty for those of us who do pay taxes on all the equipment and everything else we have in the county to let this go by without saying something. So, to all my friends that are in favor of this, hope you're still my friends.
Any questions for Zach? Hold on there, you might get some questions.
Where's your property located out here?
It's on 209, about 11 miles west of town.
You'll be on the east side, your property's on the east side?
It's actually on the south side of 209.
But it will be on?
It would be,
east
from the footprint of the map, we'd be east of the project, yes, sir. A couple of miles, best I can tell.
As a crow flies.
As a crow flies.
And Zach,
Yeah.
are you concerned about the valuation of your property with these wind towers being within a couple of miles of you?
I was told I had 3 minutes to talk, so I put off a lot of my questions. Kind of went in the trash, but yes, that concerns me. That was one of my questions. I was also concerned about, well, the taxes and how much tax money is the county giving up. So I had to do a little bit of research on what kind of turbines are we talking about? 2, 3 megawatt turbines, how many, the spacing on them. I saw spacings that were ridiculous, and some, I chose to use about 130 acres per turbine. When I did the math, it's about $3 million based on my tax rate. About $3 million the county's giving up if they give up 100% of the county taxes on that wind farm, based on my my assumptions about how many turbines would be out there. I could be wrong. I just, I tried to figure out how many turbines are we talking about, and I heard that it was going up. We're expected to be now a 500 megawatt farm instead of 300 when they first started, so that's even more turbines.
Yeah, go ahead. Just out of respect to the court's time, maybe I would just love to offer our time after this outside to discuss and answer your questions. Maybe we don't have to.
That's fine with me. I'm just answering.
Yeah, absolutely. That's nice to meet you.
Okay, Zach, I appreciate your comments.
I appreciate the time, Judge. Thank y'all.
Jenny Gwynn.
Well, my name is Jimmy Gwent. I've lived in the county for the last 20 years. I'm trustee of a trust that has an undivided interest in, along with Cam's family. My mother, Melinda, is Martha's sister. And so, I just wanted to speak towards my personal experience as a, kind of as a trustee, which you guys kind of are for our county assets. My understanding of the trustee is management and loyalty, and making good financial decisions. And so we were approached by Apex about 3 years ago, and have to confess that had a real small learning curve about wind farms, and so we did, I felt like, what was prudent, did a lot of research, actually hired one of the most experienced attorneys in Texas that started in Sweetwater, where the first firm was, to represent our side. And questions like reclamation and all those things, which were things we were thinking about in the process, we got more and more comfortable with all the different aspects of what they were doing. I just wanted to say that Apex has been great from the very beginning, just in regard to us and our questions. And you know, we had people call us when they heard about it, and we would direct them towards Apex, because we were still trying to figure out, you know, answers to questions too. And the folks that we directed that direction seemed to have had a good response from Apex, and I would encourage anybody that has a question to deal with these guys, especially they're appear to still be adding and still willing to talk and expand. And so really, I just wanted to say that we're in favor of it. We, regardless of personal feelings towards wind, felt like I know for me, the loyalty perspective was, my mother wants to keep the land in the family, and this is a prudent way to, as long as it's protected with contracts like they talk about, like you guys are talking about, your representative, your tax advisor is advised, as long as everything is tightened up. Just feel like that my responsibility as a trustee was to vote for this, for the long-term advantages for the family, but also for the county and the school districts, which you guys will hear about later. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Jimmy, anybody want to take that? Want to ask you any questions there? No, thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Gary?
Thank you.
Start out with your name, please.
Yes. Yes, the name is Gary Sanders, and I've owned property in the western part of the county for 22 years now. In fact, I don't think I'm too terribly far from Zach's property, and not too terribly far from where the proposed wind farm is going to go. So, I just like to state that clean energy, I'm on board with that. The economics, I guess, are still a question, but I'm not here to argue plus or against the economics. I think, my point really is, where are wind farms most ideally suited to be placed? As Young County, the place that we really want wind towers. To me, looking at the demographics and whatnot, the state of Texas is going to double in population by 2050. Fort Worth and Weatherford are about grown together. It won't be long before Mineral Wells is part of that. The growth is coming to Young County. Look at property values. We did some estate planning and some trust things and had to get appraisals done on our property.
And, you know, values have increased 3-4 times, you know, in the last 20 years. No reason to think, you know, that that won't continue, you know, unless something's gonna, you know, adversely affect that. And to me, I think, you know, wind farms could really jeopardize that momentum. I mean, the world is coming this way. This is a beautiful part of the world. It's got rivers and rivers and hills, and it's got a diverse topography. And we do a lot of you know, donated hog hunts, youth hunts, things of that sort from people all over the state. People come and say, "Man, I had no idea. Young County is beautiful." I was on the phone with a realtor this morning in Comanche, Texas, and one in Gulf Lake. They both had wind farms in the last 5 years. And I'd encourage you guys to talk to those people, what it's done. What about the people that are adjoining the wind farm that don't get any benefit from it? What happens to their property valuation? Does it fall 20%, 30, 50? Who's going to account for that? You know, these two realtors said there's properties that adjoin some of these wind farms that can't be sold at any price. How is that fair, you know, to that landowner that's adjoining that? You know, to me, you have one chance. You know, you go wind farms. Who says that wind's even going to be the technology in the future 5 years from now? What about hydrogen cells? Any number of things. How is this going to be decommissioned? Is this company going to be around 20 years from now when these things run their useful life? What happens if they're not? I mean, I think there's legitimate concern. Tax revenues are going up. I mean, I looked on the budget for 2019, and tax revenues increased $308,000 from the previous year. It's coming anyway. The tax revenue is going to grow. As this property gets to be more valuable, it's going to be broken up, there's going to be development, there's going to be houses, barns, there's going to be improvements made on property. It's a much prettier option, in my opinion. So, thank you for your time.
Any questions for Gary?
So when you did talk to these people about their adjoining properties and stuff to these windmills, did they say that it decreased them?
In some cases, you know, it decreased to the point where the property wasn't even sellable. They couldn't get an offer on it. And in a lot of cases, yeah, decreased 20, 30, 40% value. And I just don't know how fairly you account for those people. They didn't either get a chance to sign up or they didn't want to sign up for it, and now they're paying the price for it.
Gary, where do you live?
I live outside of Fort Worth.
Okay.
But I've been here for 22 years.
So what brought you to Young County? Just
Well, the wind farm.
family or?
Yeah, I've got family ties to this part of the world, yeah.
Greg, you mentioned decommissioning, and I looked at some studies on decommissioning these turbines, and price tag on that running anywhere from $400,000 to $500,000 per turbine. And when I drive to Abilene and see some of those turbines that have gone from white to brown, and obviously hadn't turned in a while, it makes me wonder, what are they ever going to do with that mess?
Good question.
And, you know, who gets the joy and whatnot from taking one of those things down?
Right.
Do you have any thoughts on that? Or
You know, I follow Bosque
County.
County, just voted the wind towers down about this time a month ago.
Who's that?
Bosque County. And I think, and I've got all kinds of literature and whatnot, but I think they felt like the decommissioning of a wind tower 20 years from now could run, yes, $400,000 to $500,000 a day. In 20 years, the cost could be somewhere up to $2.5 million. That's what Bosque County said.
Are you aware of the state legislation that put in place the bond for removal, so it has to be paid for?
No, I'm not.
And that there is with the recycled value of the towers, which are made of steel, is right now covers the cost of decommissioning.
And I understand the blades are not recyclable and are buried somewhere in a landfill.
There is a business that's trying to figure out a second stream for some of the fiberglass materials outside of Abilene. I think now they probably have like a 5-acre piece of land where they've been collecting the turbines and storing them before they can put their business plan together. That's a valuable point.
Okay.
But it's probably worth noting that the agreement that's before the Commissioners Court today does reference the statute on decommissioning and reclamation that was brought before the legislature previously, and our lease, the attorneys that were hired by the landowners to spend a good deal of time making sure that they're protected, and a bond is set aside per statute to cover decommissioning and reclamation.
Well, again, I'd encourage the court to do some research on the Bosque County, and here's the newspaper article right here, tax abatements. That was 30 days ago.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to speak, and I was going to.
Come up here. Stand up, call your name.
Sorry.
Mr. Sanders, hold on.
Oh, I thought you were through with me.
Well, he might have a question.
No,
Oh,
I
I'm
don't
sorry.
have a question. I was just saying I was going to speak too, and didn't get on the sheet.
Okay, you want?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Like one little statement here. The court can't allow or disallow a wind farm. All we can do
Sure,
is allow or disallow an abatement and the creation of this reinvestment zone, this mountain footprint. Obviously, there are some questions that probably need answering. It's not necessarily this court's job to answer, but some of the people out here from Apex or our council, Bob, or somebody may need to address those questions. So I appreciate the comment, Mr. Sanders, and thank you for your interest here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Phil.
My name is Will Carter, and I can hear, but I can't talk very well, so. Basically, I know that pretty much whatever I say here today is not going to really benefit me one way or another, and it won't influence what's going to happen here. But I came here, much like Gary, and we're a landowner, and we were not notified by anybody other than Cam called me and asked me if we'd be interested in putting windmills on a wind farm, or whatever it's called, or our property, which happens to be, I found out, pretty close to it, like right next door. That being said, we were given no notice as a landowner because they do significantly affect the value of the property. There's no doubt about that. I own a title company. I saw it happen here in our own county. Prime example of that, BP built a wind farm up here in Albany. I don't know if the court's familiar with that, but they went to the ARB, I believe 2 years ago, and it was built by BP and had a sideways sale to Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah, we're pretty familiar with it.
Pretty familiar. And I believe it went from $254 million of taxable value at the time down to like $9 million is what they asked for. That's pretty significant devaluation in property taxes for a county or a school district. Now then, I think they went back and renegotiated, review board did, to $54 million. But I don't know, that's a big chunk of change for a proposed tax value by a wind farm versus what actually happens 10 years later. So, the court needs to take that into consideration. I don't know these guys from Adam, but our properties out there, we pay taxes like Zach says. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we weren't given any notice. Our property values are harmed because we bought it for an investment, because we did buy ours. The MK Grand Estate, they inherited theirs. So if we want to sell ours, we can't, or we're going to take a severe short sale on it. That being said, you know, along with Zach, I'm not big on government subsidies. none of us here get subsidies in our own industries. So, I don't know how efficient these guys are, or how commercial they are. But for anybody to have a significant amount of a tax abatement, tells me that they're not very efficient in what they're doing. Otherwise, they wouldn't need it. Anyway, I'm gonna be stuck with them for at least 30 years. And that's what I'm here for. And that's all I got to say.
I think that you're opposed to.
Yes, very much so.
Okay, any questions, Phil? Phil, is any of that country, is any of the property included in the footprint?
Ours isn't. My brother lives out there. But he gets to look at them every day.
He is included in the footprint?
No, we're surrounded by them on two sides.
Okay. Any questions, Phil?
I got one.
Yeah.
You said that when you began that, what you say doesn't matter. It does matter. I care what everybody in this courtroom is saying. I really do. And I want to listen to what everybody says, so.
Well, I guess what I'm saying.
I'm a representative for you guys. I'm not in it for me. I'm in it for all of you guys.
Well, what I was getting at is that when I say something, I'm going to influence whether they built it or not. That's what I'm saying.
That's good.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else who wishes to speak with regard to being for or against, or opposed, or supportive of the project? And if there's any questions that any of you would like to pose to Apex Wind Energy, the developer, or to our representative Bob over here, we'll try to let them answer. The court's not here ready to testify or to answer questions. We're here to hear your comments as the public. So, Bob?
Your Honor, there were a couple of points legal questions that were raised. One is on the issue of reclamation of the land. Chapter 301.0003 of the Utilities Code requires wind farm developers to establish a bond that would pay for the reclamation of the land. Additionally, in the lease agreements between the developer and the landowners that have the turbines, they have additional guarantees within those leases. And to the extent the county's not privy to those leases, we don't, it's none of our business. But we do require that the developer agree to comply with 301.0003. And so I think the fears of a landowner having to personally assume the debt or the cost to reclaim are unfounded. Now, some of the early wind farms, that statute didn't exist. But I'm not aware personally, and I've been dealing in this. My first project was probably in '99 over in Jack County. And at that time, we really didn't know what the wind turbines were going to be or how they were going to last or anything. And now we're seeing that they do, in fact, have life expectancies of at least 20 and 30 years. So I think they are somewhat permanent, and with repowering, could certainly that project could last longer than their projected life of about 30 years. The second question that I heard raised was the misconception, I think, that by granting a tax abatement to the improvement, i.e. the turbines, that the county would not continue to receive tax on the underlying agricultural or real estate. The tax abatement is applicable only to the value of the turbines. Now, the landowner suffers no detriment under a wind scheme. Under a solar project, there is a change in the underlying tax base. Solar takes more footprint, takes the land essentially out of production. And so the ag exemption goes away, and the landowner would be responsible then for the increase in tax value. However, once again, the developer typically has essentially a reimbursement agreement that they will pay the difference between the ag value tax and the loss of the ag exemption. And as was noted, most of the land out in rural Texas is ag exempt, so the county gets typically, those landowners typically receive, on average, about an 88 to a 93 to 4% tax advantage. They're paying only a few percentage points of the total appraised value of the land. So not every person owns land, so the ag exemption may not apply. I often hear the objection that land or existing businesses did not get a tax abatement when they established their business years ago. Texas has only given counties the ability to grant abatements as an economic development tool since 20 years ago, probably. And so it's true, existing businesses that may be big, pretty big business did not get the advantage of tax abatement. And I understand the objection. And it's a very trite and very hackneyed statement. But if you only are given tax abatement as a tool to bring economic development to your county, it's like the fellow who's got only the hammer in his toolbox. Everything looks like a nail. And so economic development is important. These projects don't bring that many jobs, but they bring an enormous boost to the ad valorem tax base. And so there is benefit to everyone else in the community because that additional revenue on the tax base has a dampening effect on the overall tax rate. And so I do think people who are not in the zone may or may not suffer a detriment to the property values. I'm not in the real estate business. I do look at ad valorem tax values quite often. And so I have not seen a significant detriment. There may be isolated instances, I'm not going to speak to that, but overall, I have not seen a long-term consistent pattern of property devaluation adjacent to wind farms or solar farms. And I can only base that opinion on doing this for about 20 years or so. But I'm not disagreeing with anybody who has suffered directly, and I don't know their circumstances. Any other, I don't know if Ben, if anybody wanted to speak to that.
You mentioned there are bonds now that are required. Is that a state statute, or and the rest of the question is, having been and raised in an industry that is, we are required to furnish performance payment bonds on the work we do for the state.
Right.
And the bonds are only as good as the bonding company behind them. I'd be interested to know who the names of some of the sureties that are out there writing these bonds. That would be, because I kind of know that industry, and that would be some help to me.
I personally am not aware. I know, I've been presented certificates of insurance that pertain to the liability coverage for this project, but I don't know. The bonds are payable to the individual landowners, so I'm not, the county doesn't participate in that. I'm not, unless y'all can name a name, I don't know.
I don't have a name right now to share because the project hasn't reached the stage where we establish the bonds, so that is subject to the market and who can post the best bond. But Mr. Berkey, again, look forward to speaking with you outside and answer your questions.
I've got a question. I didn't sign up on your list. My name is John Garvey. I'm a landowner. I live north of Graham in the farming community between 11 and June. I am also a Graham Regional Medical Center trustee. Very concerned about this. But my question is, and maybe you can answer it in your legal profession. The BP project, I don't remember it being built with a reinvestment zone. I don't remember NextEra's east of 16 being built in the reinvestment zone. So can a wind project or some, excuse me, solar project be built without creating a reinvestment zone?
I won't say that it can't be, but the reinvestment zone is a prerequisite for tax abatement.
Okay.
And it's possible, I suppose, I don't know the details of either of those projects. I'm not aware of any projects that have been built without the benefit of tax abatement. So I can only assume that there was a reinvestment zone, but maybe it wasn't well known. I just don't know the details. I couldn't really answer your question directly.
Well, I'm old, and I do not remember a reinvestment zone being created for those projects. Judge, you may know, the court may know.
I'll ask Bob if, does the county's effect on a reinvestment zone, does it affect other entities within the county?
We're required to give notice of the creation of the zone to other taxing entities so that if they have land within the zone that they are receiving tax revenues from, they have the opportunity to also participate on tax abatement within the zone. But other than that, no. It's optional to the taxing entities within the zone to take up tax abatement on their own with the developer. And that may be possible. I've done projects where hospital districts, of course the school district will be a player under a separate statute, chapter 313, to the extent that a taxing entity has land that is incorporated inside the zone that's created, they can participate. Hospital districts. The smaller the district or the lower their tax rate, it's often that the developer will not seek to abate taxes if it's only pennies on the dollar. But the substantial taxing entities, counties, schools, hospital districts, are typically players in tax abatement.
By looks on the map that we were provided, it looks like Graham Hospital District is basically an overlay of Graham Independent School District. Based on that, it looks like about a third other projects in the South Park would be falling in the Graham Hospital District. That's, for me as a trustee, I can see that.
I think Graham Hospital District and Alney Hospital District both have some land in the project.
I think they consume all of Young County as far as taking all the land in Young County being in the taxing district.
Most of the land is in the Newcastle, but we went ahead and notified all the others just to be safe. I think any of those taxing entities could benefit if they choose to participate.
My memory serves me correct. I think both those projects I mentioned, NextEra and BP, had a tax abatement. Their taxes were abated. Like I say,
How long ago was that, do you know?
The NextEra is a project that's it's put on hold, expected to develop even further to the west of where it's at.
The BP project.
Pardon?
The BP project that you mentioned, is
No, it's probably 10, 12 years old. It's like I said, it's been repowered.
The BP Trinity Hills Wind Farm is approaching the end of its abatement life right now. It's been almost 10 years since that was created. The BP wind farm was sold a couple of years ago to a group called Aries Management. Aries Management approached us for a tax abatement that we can extend an abatement period or anything like that. I don't know, I'm not even sure that we could create another one on top of that, but we weren't interested in granting Aries Management an abatement or anything like that on Trinity Wind Farm. They have repowered that wind farm with bigger turbines and maybe even extensions on their towers. They may be taller and bigger than they are now. About 40% of that wind farm is in Young County and the other 60% is in Archer County. So I would, some of that's a little sore subject, but it's for another time and place. But it is at about the end of its.
It is not uncommon, Judge, after the initial abatement period has expired, you can't extend it, but you could grant new abatement on the repowering if you choose to do so. It's not uncommon for expansion of an original project to take place by creating another zone that abuts it or is nearby. These things are not, they're driven as much by the availability of capacity on the transformer lines, the electrical grid, as nearly anything else. Available wind. Texas is blessed or cursed. I grew up in the Panhandle. We'd curse the wind, but they're starting to feel a little better toward it now that wind farms are coming in up there. But overall, the state of Texas, almost anywhere, has sufficient wind to make it viable, but it's the availability of capacity on the grid that is more of a determining factor.
The need for capacity was there a couple months ago.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Bob, we're going to take about a 10-minute break right here.
All right.
And we'll come back at about 20 minutes after 11. All right. We'll take questions here that board not like to receive right here.
We've never been Gary Sanders. Gary, we had James Weaver in common as friends.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And James was working with me when he was here. Okay. And he went back to Fort Davis. Yeah, and I've actually been out there 3 or 4 times on out with him. Elk hunts, mule deer hunts.
Doing any good?
We got a couple out there. The first crew up, we killed like 392 and 362 on the elks. They were pretty awesome the first time we went.
I bet it wasn't. Bow or gun?
It was good. Sorry.
I know you're. I got a 356 incher hanging on the wall. I got with both.
Wow. Really? Wow. You know, it's kind of gotten a lot more difficult. We went, I think we went this year. They've been shooting well, yeah, 5 years.
I've got a friend down there that he's got elk on him, so I run and he kind of prefers mule deer. Okay, so we go way back, so there's a bunch of us down there.
Yeah, they're exotic. Is that a statue? Yeah, out there, yeah.
It doesn't matter. We don't.
Right.
And most of
Okay, so it just recently,
we went up during the rut, for a few weeks, and then let it go at that.
But yeah, James is a nice guy. I know he's still
He's
very
a
highly,
good guy.
very highly
Last
you.
week, he called me out of the blue.
Did he?
Well, we stayed in touch, but it's
Yeah.
been a while.
Yeah, he hooked me up with one of his guys on the MLD.
Oh, okay.
He was running a program out there. He had a pretty good hand up. He called me and said, hey, I wouldn't just recommend anybody, but I think this would be a good hunt. So we went out there and used 4 or 5 days.
No, you got something to do, man.
Yeah.
You don't realize you shoot a 400 inch bull in one second.
Yeah, that's crazy. People don't realize that.
Yeah. I'm kind of saying,
And you're not getting off.
That's fine, I'll give you one.
Well, I give you one, but I don't.
It's all right.
Drew's doing that with Apex as well. Just want to reach out to you. I heard you. Nice to meet you. Drew's still being with Apex. Okay.
Yeah, do that. Sure. These bonds. These are bonds for
removal of
the bond, the who writes it?
Well, I mean, it's an insurance thing. Like, just like you have performance bonds in construction, it's very simple.
But who's the beneficiary?
The landowner.
So you have individual bonds with every landowner.
Make sure that happened. Other states required it, so we've had it in our lease since before the state of Texas required it.
But just like a performance bond, I mean, if that bonding company goes out of business, then obviously you have to have, you put it in place with someone else by statute. It can't just, they can't take your money, you wouldn't keep paying that annual bond payment, right? If they go out of business, you have to get a bond with another insurance company.
It's a foreign concept for me.
Well, you can get bonds otherwise, if you're, right? So it's the same thing, so if one of the companies that you were paying for your bond went out of business, you wouldn't keep writing a check.
Correct.
And you'd have to go get your bond insurance through someone else.
Right.
But that's the same thing.
They take that careful about the bonding and the sureties that they allow.
It'll be the same with anybody.
Well, if I know a name, I'd probably know who they are and know something about them, but I didn't hear a name.
Well, we have it for this project, it won't kick in for 2 years. So that's the bond we put in place, so we wouldn't have any.
So a landowner that wanted assurance that the turbine would be properly decommissioned, doesn't know who the bond, who carries the bond until 10 years.
Correct. When you need the bond. I mean, if you were gonna build a job in 10 years, would you put it in place now? I mean, that's when it's gonna be decommissioned, well after 10 years. Because it's a power plant. It's got value. If that company went out of business before 10 years, there's a lot of value in that power plant.
In fact, landowners that want the right to sell.
They've wanted to keep it and have be able to remove it themselves. They don't do that, it's just too messy. But no, you've got a lot of value in that. In fact, right now, some of the ones in California, even the lattice towers, there's a value of steel. People are taking the contract for free to go remove the towers because they're salvage costs. And it all depends on the price of steel. It says you've got 2-inch thick steel towers.
They do.
You've got cable, I think they also, it's got copper in it. You've got some value.
Comes to a certain distance up.
There would be some, there's also be some components that might be hard.
And
So, yeah, and on that, sure, there's a lot that's not recyclable yet. But there's also ingenuity, just like you see with this, with COVID, you've seen a lot of ingenuity with people adapting and going on Zoom calls, court cases and so. So people are figuring it out. When there's an opportunity, the more opportunity there is, i.e. the more terminal ways that are available, people are gonna figure out how to recycle those. And there they are. So we're doing the same thing. They're figuring out how to recycle. So. It is a very interesting time. It's working.
And we'll press rate.
Will?
some of the properties actually marked off.
He'll be presenting the numbers here a little bit to make a pretty good case toward the value that it brings to the county and then later on to the school districts. They will see a very good shot to the evaluation. Tax dollars that you will have to pay.
Well, they're pushing.
That's the best part.
Coming out? Sir?
Doing better.
You can bring that
You're saying your land your assets. Correct. This is mine.
Well, this is, maintained, large land ownership. Well, Wynn actually doesn't have
I wasn't invited to be part of this.
Instead, they own all the mineral. So that is, you know, that's how that works. I know, you know, under this part, the mineral is still runs, but yeah, I mean, it's something that we thought about, all the time, similar to. Here at the very first, I can tell you how, we went round and round. We decided we had the right contract in place, the right terms. Strange world. That means everything is priced to the customer. Everybody's worried about. Right, so I would make a good one. At the end of the day, Bill Gates is a smart guy. Of course, Wynn's got to come in and solve it too. They're probably figuring out, right, how to change our power creation. So we just don't know today. Today's today. We can provide what
Oh, yes. 27 years.
Oh, yeah.
It's because of natural gas.
Hey, you don't have to argue that with me. I don't think
We practiced black story. Generally thought I had the summertime. And they could have it this winter. 3 weeks later, it was found. We were 4 minutes away from
and it's hard to get them synchronized again.
You synchronize but the trick is our power. They have black stock cable, they had to generate. That's what I thought had to come to. We practiced it.
What do you think our power plant's gonna make it? No, this is the next gas.
I was still in high school, so I'm over you. Built in the 60s, #1.
Always follow the
Pressurized steam is something like this. City electric, I worked in tax office, only in for 30 years. Like the 50s, and here we are. What are we now? 60 years later, and it's still running. Of course, it's changed hands.
Mr. White, can I take a picture of your map?
It's still there.
Yeah, I'm just talking.
Well, my wife is still so much better. She really enjoys working.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
It's all good. She really enjoys working.
I didn't know until she told me. I said, man, Joyce, can't go to the ball game.
We'll come back to order.
Good as it was Ricky, that's.
Oh, it's
Not me.
There's a Graham especially, now, big tough,
yes. Everything okay?
They were tough, real tough.
Any questions come to mind? Definitely Apex talk to you.
Playing forward suppression.
selling it rock for that truck. Selling it rock for that truck.
I appreciate it. I believe the next thing is
We tried.
Appreciate the friends.
this court needs to do some things, I believe, with regard to 212-202, and that we need to make sure that the reinvestment zone and the abatement itself retains or expands employment in Young County, attracts major investments into Young County, contribute to the economic development of Young County, and meet the guidelines and criteria that's most recently adopted here in Young County. And with those questions, I'm going to let Bob address the court and audience.
We have reviewed your guidelines. Of course, we work with you on adopting those guidelines. They're designed to give you a scorecard, if you would, by which you could, they're designed for any kind of economic development. So they weren't designed to favor or disfavor any particular sort of industry. But the guidelines are there to give you a certain set of criteria by which an application can be judged. And as I've said, we've reviewed the application and compared them to the guidelines, and they are conforming, and so they would qualify for a tax abatement under your guidelines. Some of the things that are in there is it would take a minimum improvement to the tax base of $10 million to be eligible for consideration of abatement. Now, that's not to say that a smaller business wouldn't bring advantages and employment, but the county's benefit, if you would, for anything less than $10 million is rather de minimis. And so tax abatement wouldn't benefit the county, and it might or might not benefit the applicant under those smaller projects. So that's one of the, it also, as the court has mentioned, or the judge has mentioned, there should be employment factor. In this case, that employment factor is rather small for the size over the permanent jobs, but the temporary jobs are considerable. A project of this size, and I'll let Ben maybe add, but I'm expecting between 200 and 300 individual jobs of various types. Some of those jobs, wind is a little more demanding of technical expertise in that the foundations are rather complicated, rather large, require certain skills that not every community has people available to do that level of work, to that level of specification. Solar projects are simpler in the infrastructure needs, so they can hire more local than wind may. But there will be considerable employment of local people if they're willing to work. So, I don't know if that answers your question or not. The project does meet your criteria.
Okay. What's the next order of business?
Well, we would need a motion to take action on the resolution in order to create the zone.
Anybody?
I'll second that. And with a comment too, you know, with what you were just saying, Mr. Bass, is, I mean, like Mr. Birkin owns the rock pit, he's gonna make some money off of this too, along with some of our construction companies that may be building the roads, such as Kramer, Widener, whoever it may be. So it is gonna bring in some, you know, income to our county like that too, and these owners of other businesses.
Let me make one more statement here. There's no member of the court has any interest in the property or the surrounding property that I know of that would make any kind of conflict of interest here in our participation.
Correct.
By creating this reinvestment zone, is by no means giving them the green light
just the first prerequisite step, yes, sir. Now, that zone, once you create it, it exists for 5 years. And you can extend it out to a maximum of 10. After 10 years, it goes away. Any abatement within it goes away. So whatever's built within that zone, in the end of the abatement period, goes on the tax rolls at full value, full depreciated remaining value. And wind does not depreciate as fast as solar does. Solar has a statutory accelerated depreciation. It'll abate 80% of its initial value over 10 years by statute, by Texas statute. And so it has a very quick drop off. Wind has a longer life, if you would, at higher tax rates. It will depreciate, but it won't depreciate near like solar does.
Okay, we have a motion, I believe the correct language would be a motion by Jim Wiley, second by Matt Pruitt, to adopt the reinvestment zone as defined in the Young Wind project. Would that be correct, Bob?
Yes, sir. Judge, I have after the vote, I do have a resolution in order that will need to be signed. I have 3 copies. One will go back to the developer, one will be retained in public records here, and I'll keep a copy of my record.
Okay. Only all the properties listed, will we need to go through those?
No, Your Honor, those have been set out in the application and in the notice, so we're covered. There will be an attachment to the order that has the map and the property list as well.
All in favor of adopting the resolution of creating the Young Wind Reinvestment Zone in Young County, Texas? Any opposition? Do that in a 5-0 manner.
I'm sorry?
We'll do that in a unified 5-0 manner.
Thank you, Your Honor. question or next issue to be resolved is whether or not the county wishes to actually participate in tax abatement. On your behalf, we have worked with Apex and Young Wind LLC to develop terms of a suitable tax abatement agreement. And I guess I should turn over my speaker here for a second. These abatement agreements are contracts. In this particular case, the counties would be receiving what's known as a pilot payment. A pilot is an acronym for a payment in lieu of taxes. It's the same amount of revenue, essentially, that the county would get if they were to grant a straight tax abatement. Tax abatements are administered through the appraisal district, so the county gets a declining revenue stream as depreciation takes some effect, and it's based on the appraised value of the project year to year. Under a pilot payment, the parties agree to a flat rate that's essentially the same amount of revenue the county would get over 10 years through an abatement, in this case of roughly 70%. And that revenue stream is then averaged over 10 years and then divided by the capacity of the project to give us a per megawatt amount of money, a pilot payment. Now, the pilot payment that we've negotiated is based on a 500 megawatt project, but due to the uncertainties of the market and so forth, the developer is obligated to build not less than 300 megawatts. So the county will get no less than 300 megawatts, and if they do build out, they would get the full benefit of 500 megawatts. The pilot amount that's been negotiated is $1,840 per megawatt. At the 300 megawatt level, that's a little bit more than $500,000, about $540,000, I think. At the full amount, it's $920,000 annually for 10 years. At the end of that period of time, the remaining value, the depreciated value of the project, goes on the tax rolls at full value. And we can't predict the future that far out. We can tell you what the county will get in 10 years, over 10 years, because of the contractual agreement, but it's anticipated over the life of the project that the county would realize about $30 million or so that they would not get if the project were not built. Now that's the revenue stream. In addition to that, the project, we've reached other agreements with the developer. I'm not going to read the 20-plus page document, but there are obligations to build within a certain period of time. There is a one-time extension that's available if circumstances beyond the control of the developer manifest. Generally speaking, the project is anticipated, if it's built, would be completed by the end of 22. It could extend out further if need be, but that's roughly when we think the project would be substantially complete. Substantially complete means when 300 megawatt at least of the project has been built. Again, the anticipation is the full 500 would be built. The abatement period, the abatement period is not to exceed 10 years. It cannot be extended beyond 10 years. The revenue in that period of time is a contractual payment. It comes outside of the ad valorem assessment process, meaning that it does not count against the calculation of the effective tax rate. So it gives the county two essential benefits. One is a known amount of money per year, and the simplification, if you would, of the county getting a payment that does not count against them in the effective tax rate. As you know, the legislature's capped counties at a 3.5% maximum rate increase. So this pilot payment does not calculate into that, and so it's revenue that's outside of the ad valorem calculation. So it's money that they're have a little bit more flexibility with the ad valorem tax rate. As I said, the rate is $18.40 per megawatt, 920,000 annually. Other covenants that they would create at least 2 full-time jobs, and as Ben had mentioned, there are other ancillary jobs not under Young Wind's control that might be applied. We have required them to agree to an incentive to those 2 employees to relocate to Young County, and the developers agreed to do that, to give them essentially a relocation bonus to move to the county. There is a separate road use agreement that we will sign before construction starts, but there is a road repair obligation. Any county roads that are damaged or impacted by the project will be repaired by the developer. That's based on a pre-construction inspection of the roads and a post or during the middle of the construction. So we will know what the conditions of the road are before the project starts. And at the end of the project, or as I say, if certain circumstances arise that a road needs immediate repair, the road use agreement will apply under that case. They have provided to us proof of insurance for liability purposes on all of their vehicles, general liability, workers' comp, and the like. They will do job fairs to recruit local spending. As I say, there is a language in the agreement that recognizes the technical needs of the developer not necessarily being available locally. There are rights of inspection by the appraisal district or the county on proper notice. Each year, the applicant will certify to compliance with the terms and conditions of the agreement. The bonding requirement that was mentioned does require that the bonding company have at least an A- or better, or be rated A or better by S&P Global Rating, so those are substantive bonding companies. There are spacing requirements to nearby residential structures of at least 1,800 feet, no closer than any occupied residential structure. There are provisions for maximum sound. I am not an engineer, but I'm told that the 1 hour LEQ of 50 dBA is the, at any residential structure, would have to be below that maximum sound level. The county does have rights under the agreement for default, including recapture of taxes that would have been paid in the event there are defaults under the terms of the agreement. The project can and may be assigned. It's not uncommon, but the county has a right to be notified of any such assignment and to ascertain whether the county believes any assignee has the wherewithal to carry out the terms of the agreement of the original parties. I don't, frankly, with Apex, I don't anticipate that, but I can't say it could not happen. The provisions of the assignment does have a fee that would be reimbursed to the county for the county's investigation of the proposed assignee to cover the county's attorney's fees or consulting fees. There is a provision, should the project ever be acquired by a non-taxable entity, that there would be provisions for the county to be protected in that event. There is an agreement under venue that should any dispute arise between the parties, that dispute would be decided in the district court here in Young County or in the United States District Court that has jurisdiction over Young County. That provision, just for purposes of information, is in there because we had a dispute in another county and that they did not have a venue provision, and the suit was threatened to be moved to New York. We threatened to beat them to the courthouse, and it went away, but that's why that's in there. Same thing for the assignment provision. There is a provision in the document that the county will be reimbursed for any attorney's fees it incurs in negotiating this agreement. So the county will not bear my expense. I will bill the county, and the county will pay me and then seek reimbursement, and they'll be repaid by the developer. That essentially is the terms and conditions of the agreement. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have about the terms of the agreement itself. Yes, sir.
If I heard you right, I think I heard you say the contract is assignable, and the county's rights in that are only being made known or be notified of the assignment. The county doesn't.
We do have the right to withhold consent if the
Okay,
assignee does not meet our expectations.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And we have an allowance to do that investigation if and when that comes about. Any other? Yes, sir.
At the end of the 10-year abatement program, and the assets go on the books at whatever value. In the case of Olney, BP sold the project, assigned it to a third party, and that party approached the county to ask for an additional assignment, or an additional abatement, excuse me. And I guess that's not allowed, but you made a point earlier that you could renovate the equipment, you could add more, you could expand the zone. You know, why is it after a 10-year period that there was an additional request for the abatement to continue? Surely after 10 years, the economics should begin to kick in, shouldn't they?
Well, I presume so. The county's under no obligation to grant any further abatement, period.
I guess I'm just thinking about, you know, we'll do this for 10 years, and at the end of the 10-year period, we'll tweak the system in some way. We'll renovate, we'll expand, we'll do something so that we can then legally ask for an additional 10 years. Is that a concern?
That's exactly what happened here with the BP system, which 2 years ago sold.
Mm-hmm.
And they added another $40 million or $50 million in what we call repower. In other words, they put brand new generators and blades, increased the value of that. And we were approached, and we took the same stance, I think, that you're taking now. No, we're not willing to move any further than the 10 years. We're done with this abatement. You're going to have to be on your own. So that's the position that we took, FEMA.
And, you know, as a business person, I guess I'm a business person, I'm a lawyer, but I practice law and I try to, you know, be efficient in my work. But if the government's offering me a tool, I'm going to try to use it. It's lawful. I mean, you know, why would the prudent businessman not apply? That doesn't mean that the governmental entity has to give it. But I see no sin being committed by the developer asking for it. It means their project costs less and makes a bigger profit. So I mean, that's what I understand capitalism is saying.
No, I fully agree. I just find it interesting at the end of the 10-year period. Let's find a way to get some additional consideration. Let's find a way to extend this abatement program. And if we can't do that, maybe we'll sell it. We'll sell it to another party and let them in turn, apply for additional abatement. I mean, it's all, within the 10-year, within the scope of what's allowable. And as a businessman like yourself, I understand that.
But it's not, it's not that they were applying for a repower, right? They were doing an additional investment in the community and asked, and we were not. So they were not trying to get an additional abatement for the same project. It was for the repower, which was an additional investment. Substantial.
Yeah, I might speak to that. I think it's a question of cause. The company is not choosing to repower the project so that they can go back to the county and receive another abatement. They're choosing to repower the project because technology has improved and they would like to improve their margins. The financial backers of the power company at which point say, have you met with the county to see if you can go forth to get another abatement? But the abatement was not the cause for the repower.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah, and we brought along Will Preston of Merit Advisors, who can share more information, which Mr. Bass has already previewed some of, but Will?
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Judge Bullock, Commissioners, my company's Merit Advisors, and what we did was we took what's inside the 312 and kind of quantified it into those. So you can see exactly what the benefit to the county is going to be over the term. As Mr. Bass is so well spoken, you can see the actual benefit to the county. The project would actually go on the tax rolls for year one as a 1/1/23. You can see the appraised value in the benefit. The total benefit we modeled it for 25 years. You can see that the total benefit to the county is just under $50 million in revenue. So you can see on a year-by-year basis on page one, a couple of things that, that as I was researching this and I looked at the tax base for Young County, you're just slightly over $1 billion. And you can see that this project will add immediately in January 2023, $580 million that hit your tax roll that would be valued for property tax purposes. My background, I was a chief appraiser for a lot of years back in the 90s, and now we're a property tax consulting firm, and that's what we do. The other thing is your M&O rate. So when you add the $580 million, the abatement, that piece is only effective to your M&O rate. Your debt service rate, which is roughly 4.5 cents right now, what's going to happen with your rate, it's going to be able to come down 50%. You're going to use your INS money only to satisfy your debt for your bonds. And so the INS portion of your rate is not affected at all by the abatement. The 70% abatement is strictly for the M&O portion. And then you can see actually, I put a column in that shows the actual advantage, what the abatement is in terms of dollars and cents. And it's, 2.3 million in year one, but then you add back, it was negotiated so well, you add back the $920,000 in the pilot payment, which does not go against your effective rate. And so what legislation has done is kind of tied your hands. The effective rate, just kind of going over some vocabulary, it's the rate necessary to generate the prior year's levy. So based on your levy in 2020, I'm sorry?
It's got a new name.
Right, it does, but essentially that's what happens. So you're bound by only a 3.5% bump. So, and what's going on in Young County, you can see appraised values are increasing, but y'all aren't able to really participate in all that increase without reduction of rate. So the additional $920,000 is then a benefit to the county that's not counted against your rate. And so you can see, I put a couple of other tabs in. There's going to be a little bit of transmission line that's developed on page 2. You can see the benefit from that. And then you can see the 10 years with the handout. You can see the 10 years and what that does, and when the pilot starts, and then when the project would go, 100% on the roll without the abatement in year 11. And then I only modeled it for 25 years. Typically, we'll model these for 30 years, but roughly, and you're still at $50 million to the county over the 25-year period, which it's a big economic boom for the county. And I'm happy to answer any questions, or anybody has any questions regarding this handout. I'm happy to
Got these transmission lines here on there, or are you saying there's going to be additional transmission lines there, or are we talking about the same transmission line?
It's going to be a little bit, Ben can really speak to that, Ben or Drew could, but this was our estimated cost of the transmission line, and where we felt like it would go on the tax roll, be on the top of page 2. So you can see that.
This doesn't count the substation at the THU.
That should count the substation.
That would include the substation as well.
The transmission line is going to be quite short because the CREZ line, or the Encore lines that already run west of Throckmorton have been built for some time. The property we have leased is underneath those lines, so it's more or less like a hop from our project substation to an Encore substation that would be built in the sort of Murray area near their existing.
That was kind of the lure anyway, wasn't it?
It was one of them, yeah, a driver.
Absolutely.
Because they're golf back a whole lot.
Yes.
Anyway, you can see the numbers, guys, and that's, sitting in your position. I served on a school board for too many terms, about 5 terms, and so at the end of the day, what's the benefit to the county? And that's what you guys can see from what I provided. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Your last name, Preston?
Preston, yes, sir. PRS, that's what yes, sir.
And you were tax assessor collector where?
In Cook County in Gainesville, so born and raised in Wichita Falls, and then moved to Gainesville in the early 90s, and created Merit Advisors in 98, and we represent lots of mainly oil and gas clients and energy guys, so that's our part. Thank you.
So I don't have any of the notes. I was just trying to jot down a few. So the fixed payments are going to be that 900,000 plus to the county for the first
10 years.
10 years.
Yes, sir.
And then in year 11, all that goes away.
Yes, sir.
And what's on the tax roll in year 11? Close to 600 million or something like that.
What are we estimating that the
We're
depreciation?
456 million. So we're starting roughly at 600 million. And by year 11, you're at 450 million, rough number, 456 million. It would get the full rate with no abatement to it.
So in year 11, the tax proceeds for the county would be 2.6 million, and that should at least stay there moving forward for a while.
Yeah, so year 25, I'm still showing it's right at $1 million, $972,000 a year in year 25 to the county on a value of looks like a value of 147 million in 25 years.
Okay.
Come on the tax roll, new tax in 10 years.
It comes on what the value of it is at that time.
We'll have to adjust it.
Like you said, we can't see in the future, we don't know
Okay.
what that's gonna be, it's all up to what Austin.
It will go on at the appraised value, so we're contractually, agreeing to the values today. And we're basing that on that contractual agreement for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, in the 11th year, effective January 1 of that 11th year, the appraisal district will tell us what the remaining value is.
And I can speak to that real quick. So Pritchard and Abbott works for Young County. They're out of Fort Worth. John Rutledge is the appraiser. He'll value this. The appraisal district is like their home. it's gonna be valued as a 1-1 every year. And what's gonna go into that, these guys would provide financials, they would provide data. This is what they're selling their power for. So, you know, the last 5 or 6 years, we've been in a sub $3 gas market, and that those power numbers are gonna be, you know, this could go up. This is kind of a conservative number on where we model this based on current conditions. So as you see commodity price on the natural gas increase, obviously the value of the asset. So the responsibility of the president district is to value the asset as a 1-1. And so we did the best we could as far as modeling it now over the next 25 years. And, you know, that could change, and that's what Mr. Bass really talked about.
That's what did change up and only when they repowered the Trinity Hills wind farm. That went to brand new equipment in year 8. So it comes on the tax roll with just 2-year-old equipment. So
Yeah.
that's a plus.
You bet. Yeah.
And it could be the same way here.
Most of the wind farms that have been built and are at least 8 years old are because of the technology advancing so fast. It's not uncommon to see repower being done even before the abatement period expires. That doesn't change your abatement agreement. Now, a lot of the developers are waiting till the abatement expires and then they repower and take another attempt at least to bite the apple again. And you know, typically a project of repower is a fraction of the original cost because you've got all of the infrastructure essentially stays, with the exception of either the blades or the nacelle or the, you know, there may be, in some of the projects, I'm speaking a little bit out of my depth here, but I've seen repowers where they didn't do anything more than put on more efficient blades. So that investment's rather small.
And the local spending, I know we had talked about from fire departments, youth programs, this kind of things. Is any of that risk to it?
I'm sorry, Judge, I didn't get the question.
Is any of that addressed here in this local spending?
Like the fire departments?
There is not, no. Typically, these companies are better, they do things, but just, it's not a requirement for them to do things. Most businesses are hit up to contribute here and there to different things. We leave, and this is more, as much my prerogative, and, you know, I don't feel right that the government requires many things of me. We can require certain things of a developer who wants something, tax abatement, but we're not in the business of forcing them or using that to do other things. So that's on them.
And Apex historically, and our plan here, is to make substantial donations to the fire departments and host meet and greets and if it's even required, possibly help with training if there's additional training. This is commonly done by developers when entering communities. It's not part of this agreement because this agreement is between the county and us, but that does not reflect a lack of effort on our end to support the departments that will be receiving these assets in their territory.
Anybody else? What's our next move?
If there's no other public comment, then we would need a motion to either approve or disapprove the tax abatement agreement between Young County and Young Wind LLC. Again, the application's been reviewed, the financials have been negotiated fairly sharply, I would say, with the developer. Very cooperatively, but we had a few times that we didn't agree exactly on how the thing ought to be done. But this abatement agreement is certainly within and at the upper level of similar agreements with other counties. So I would need a motion and a second and then a vote on that matter.
I'll make that motion to enter into this tax abatement agreement with Apex Energy.
It's actually, the entity will be Young Wind LLC.
Young Wind LLC.
What was that, Bob?
Said the actual entity that we're entering into the abatement agreement is Young Wind LLC.
Wind LLC.
I'll second that.
Thing moved pretty fast today. I don't know what's gonna really be voting on it today, but you outlined it pretty well, all my concerns in the contract. So I believe it's a pretty good deal for the county. Thank you, Bob, for what you've done.
Sure.
Appreciate that.
Any further discussion? You need to say anything, Bob?
No, sir, I don't believe so. Like I say, these projects are being built all around the state, typically where the transmission line has remaining capacity. Texas is now the #1 producer of alternative energy. And as Mr. Davis, I think, mentioned, oil and gas prices fluctuate by a global market. The wind energy and the electrical grid is regulated by ERCOT, and so the more sources you have, the more stable that grid becomes, contrary to some recent controversy. If you really look at the gas plants had more problems being online than the wind and the solar did. The problem sort of is that the grid was not built for that kind of weather. Now, whether that should have been required, you can winterize solar and you can winterize wind. You heat the blade just like blade or wings on an airplane can be de-iced, but the state didn't require it, and it's sort of like the cost savings. The builders didn't build it because the state didn't require it. Those same turbines and solar panels didn't go down in Nebraska where it was sub-zero for all winter. So, I mean, it's not the fault of the solar or the wind that we had the crisis of the ice. But anyway, that's off the topic. I don't have anything further, Judge, unless you do.
Well, I appreciate everybody's participation in this. I appreciate some of the comments regarding tax abatement. I've had my issue with tax abatement also, because of some of the comments that have been made out here with regard to tax abatement. But I do understand the circumstances and, I know in the long run, it would be a benefit to the county to do that, although I think it's got a problem. To say a little bit of something about what Bob said in regard to the reliability of that, and I think that that's fully ERCOT and our state, I guess you'd say, is getting caught with pants down, so we won't prepare for that kind of issue. I think that just stand up into the circumstances and forward planning of our ERCOT system. Agree. With that said, we've got a motion on the table. Commissioner Wiley, a second by Commissioner Pruitt to enter into a tax abatement agreement with Young Wind LLC as has been presented, I guess, and I will say summarized by our counsel, Mr. Robert T. Bob Bass. And I'll just call the question with regard to all in favor of such abatement. Is there any opposed? For none, being none, I'm going for the majority, which is, that's one thing.
Just have 3 copies here. Need signatures, they're marked with blue signature flag. You're the only signatory on that, Mr. Clerk. The prior order authorizes you to sign on behalf of the town.
Dan, question for you, while we're doing paperwork. The reinvestment zone, those acres held within that zone, is there any payments per acre that go to the landowner to be in that zone?
No, but everything on this, it's just checks.
But no, I'm trying to deal with $5 an acre.
We have developed, we're under a break.
Well, they started.
Yeah, right now we're under. Yeah, yeah. And then we'll change the construction water rate at the end of the year. Offset the construction, we put in, refer back to the original.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Actually, you get a little bit of sheriff's deputy.
He's out there running. Philip.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we've got a motion to adjourn. You bet.
I'll make my motion.
Well, I've been given one question, but I didn't.
Public notice.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good bit of it is falling in that old acreage that our family has. A lot of that, for some reason, it digitized Young County CAD. I don't know why that doesn't come up, but.
They put it, you know, they put a picture of maps.
Yeah, and that's.
So it's pretty well stocked all the way right down here.
So the county's.
Doesn't
matter what size the tower is.
This coverage on this clip on each side is protected from
But they.
Shepard.
Tower size.
Training.
Really
There's a lot of right there. In that area.
they have the projections over the next 25 years. I appreciate that.
Well, on TV,